This is Inside the Mind of Dame Unique, where we explore all things in the world of creative writing. Today's episode is character creation. Think onion, think layers, think peeling back and exploring the depth of a character. This episode is here to help you as a writer appreciate and understand the depth of any character that we create in this world. It's to give you food for thought and to help you to create very realistic, convincing characters using these points or layers of consideration. I hope that you find this information, this episode, inspirational, thought-provoking, something that just sparks your mind and helps you to create some of the most phenomenal characters known to mankind. So when I say think onion, think layers, I mean to assess these segments of what makes up a character. What makes the character human? What makes them unique? What makes them who they are? And how they then go on to lead the story as a protagonist or an antagonist. How they then become convincing enough to be, placed in a story where your readers read and think, "Oh, that character," So first, I want to talk about the appearance of your character. When creating characters, I often, and I'm sure many of you do, conjure up this blurry image of what my character looks like. And it's strange because it often changes. And when I say often, it's literally changing like every few minutes. I can't quite see their face, but I'm thinking about what they're wearing, their appearance. Do they look unkempt, slightly disheveled? Or are they like a very suave dresser? Do they wear designer brands? Do they shop in a more affordable place like Primark and they manage to look amazing? Do they look clean but untidy, like in a state of disarray, but their clothes are clean, they look clean, they smell clean? Are their clothes very worn and tatty? Do they wear jewelry, makeup, nail varnish? Do they wear like a specific fragrance? Are they wearing like perfumed oil? What is your character's appearance? Do you always see them wearing a woolly hat? Do they always wear flip-flops in the summertime? What is your character's appearance like? What does it say to you? What does it say to those around them? Appearance is something where I guess many of us don't really pay that much attention to unless you're choosing to pay attention to it. And I know that sounds very bizarre, but for example, when you board a train on the London Underground, or I'll speak for myself. When I board a train on the London Underground, I'm not really looking around at people and thinking, oh, what are they wearing? I'm not very fashion focused myself. All I'm thinking about is how many stops before my stop. I'm thinking about, I feel hot. I'm thinking about, am I sweating too much? So not everyone is concerned about the next person's appearance. However, appearance, especially in the world of creative writing, is essential because it conveys a sort of message across to the audience of what this particular character may be like, what they encompass, perhaps what their values are. They may wear religious attire all the time. You may see them wearing a gym ensemble or something suitable for fitness. And, when presented in the right way, it gives the reader an audience where it gives the reader an understanding, of this particular character. So the narrative is saying, or the narrator is saying, Monday, this character is wearing yoga tights, a top that clearly says yoga, some non-slip yoga socks. Perhaps they go to Pilates. So it gives the reader an understanding of maybe this character's into fitness. But at this stage, we don't know. We know what they're now wearing, but who's to say they just haven't started, or they just started, their fitness journey. Perhaps they're severely overweight, and today is the day that this character started their journey of health and fitness. We don't know yet, but we know what they're wearing, and it's intriguing to the reader. I like to know what colour the items of clothing are. Perhaps your character wears odd socks, or maybe your character just really doesn't care what they put on as long as they are fully clothed from head to toe. They're comfortable, they're happy. So when speaking about a character and creating a character, please do take into consideration the many layers and how these layers can work towards your benefit as a writer. Next, we move on to the accommodation. Think about describing the exterior of the character's accommodation. Where do they live? Do they live in a house? Do they live in a hotel? Perhaps they live in an apartment complex. Maybe it's a gated community, or within a gated community. Maybe they live in a small studio apartment. Perhaps they do a room share. Who knows? What does the outside look like, though, the exterior of their accommodation? Is the garden upkeep, to your standard? Is there rubbish on the lawn? Is the lawn even kept up and maintained? Like, has the grass been cut? Have the plants been watered? Has the rose bush been trimmed? Do they have a rose bush? Do they have flowers? Is it all concrete outside? Do they have parking space? Are the bins just overflowing outside? Tell the reader what you see outside that character's exterior. And depending on who's narrating the story, perhaps it's another character narrating the story from their point of view. Perhaps you have a narrator looking in at all the characters and describing what they see as a narrator. Think about the angle and think about what you can add when speaking about a character's accommodation. And think about the value that it brings. It can form all kinds of assumptions in the reader's mind. It could give the impression that if they've got all bin bags strewn across their front garden and up their driveway, perhaps this character is very filthy, and maybe the inside of the home, the accommodation, isn't going to be too pleasant. Who knows at this stage? But isn't it intriguing to add those layers on? So now we step inside the accommodation. We look around. Are they living in a penthouse apartment? Do they have a maid? Is the hallway clear of dirt and dust? Or is it filled with dust and dirt and insects crawling around? Do you see that this character is very, very organised? Every single picture on the wall is straight and at a precise angle. There's not one speck of dust floating around or in your eyesight that you can see. Breathe in. What's the smell? What do you smell? Do you smell like damp? Do you smell a fresh burst of fragrance coming from, let's say, a plug-in air freshener, for example? What does the inside of their accommodation smell like? Is the paintwork chipped? Is it peeling? Is the wallpaper very old? Step into the kitchen. Are there dirty pots and pans around? All of these components directly paint a picture of what your character is like. And these scenes don't even have to include the character. You could just simply spend time talking about the inside of the character's accommodation, the outside of the character's accommodation. It gives the reader better understanding of this character. Maybe they're grieving someone in their family or family member or close friend, and now their house is in a current disarray of disorganization and it's a mess. It's because they're going through something, and right at this very moment when the narrator looks over at their accommodation, it looks awful. Or maybe they are super, super clean and neat, very precise, likes things in a certain way, certain structure in their home. What does it say to you about the character? Do consider that as one of your layers to your character's onion. Moving across to nutrition. Does your character cook their own meals, for example, and then go into work and bring them in as lunch? Do they eat, only home-cooked food? Or do you find that this character is always ordering a takeout? Do they spend excessive amounts on takeaway food or processed food? Or are they vegan? Do they only eat raw foods? Tell the readers more about your character's diet and nutrition. So yeah, we've seen them in yoga attire. But a couple of chapters later, they're at home and they're eating a large bag of fish and chips with loads of curry sauce. They've got a litre bottle of fizzy pop, and they are just gorging on this. Do you see how the two sides of the two portions of these layers, the two pieces of these layers, just seem a bit odd? On the one hand, you have this character going to a yoga class wearing yoga attire, or we can assume that they were going to a yoga class. And on the other hand, you can see that they are stuffing their face with unhealthy food. So what does this say to the reader as, about your character? It's an interesting perspective, isn't it? Does the food they eat negatively affect them? For example, when I consume cow's cheese, it gives me really bad acne, and I do my best to avoid cow's cheese, but the odd few times this year alone, I've had pizza that contains cow's cheese, and then I've woken up the next day and my face is covered in spots. Does the food and, the way they handle their nutrition, does it negatively affect their lives? Maybe they are allergic to egg, fish, but they love omelette and they eat it regularly and they come off with an upset stomach. And then it gives the writer the chance to delve deeper into why this character continuously does things that affects them negatively. It's a very interesting area of creative writing when creating a character. I think sometimes through some stories that I've read, the author may have perhaps overlooked these elements because just by adding certain things, even if it's just a couple of lines, it makes a massive difference to the overall delivery, in my humble opinion, to the story and the entire narrative and how it plays out. Moving across to good traits. Or what we perceive to be good traits. Perhaps you have a character who, at the start of the story, is seen to be very charitable, very generous, gift-giving, always seems like they bail people out of, a dark space, they give them money, they cheer them up with lavish gifts. But behind closed doors, this character is possibly a serial killer. This character is possibly an abusive husband, an abusive wife, an abusive partner. This character is probably an habitual liar. But the perspective and the persona that they want their audience to see as a character is one that is overly generous, very loving, very giving, very charitable. Good traits. They can hide a lot of dark, sinister, bad traits. There's a phrase that is thrown around a lot: the good, the bad, the ugly. And there's another phrase that comes to mind as well: see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. You can do so much with these little phrases because they have such a big impact depending on how you use them. Again, think onion, peel that layer, let's explore the good traits. Maybe your character donated their kidney. Maybe your character donates blood once a month. Maybe your character donates their time to a homeless shelter and even brings the food and nutrition to support the homeless and help get them out of the position that they're in at the moment. Maybe your character does all this, then returns home and is very dark and abusive to their family, to their household. Maybe they beat up their pet. Who knows? Use these good traits for characters that are just genuinely good, or use good traits to hide the sinister side of those shadow characters, the ones that go along inconspicuously and hardly ever notice until it's too late. And then all the supporting characters are like, I had a suspicion. Who would have thought so-and-so would have been like that? You know? It's very interesting, and I love using good traits in that way to form an even more impactful narrative. Speaking of sinister traits or hiding sinister things, we should move over to bad traits. Now, a lot of writers could do bad traits that are overtly bad, like you show a serial killer, you show a rapist, you show an abusive partner, you show someone who is just rude. You could use bad traits like that. Or perhaps the bad traits are subtle and go unnoticed until it's too late. Like, for example, let me think. A gaslighter in a relationship. Making their partner feel like they do things wrong when in actuality they haven't done anything wrong. Or someone who gives the impression that they are completely besotted and in love with another character, but really they're just there to use them for their financial gain. Perhaps a bad trait could be someone who has a friend or family member or close one who's struggling with their weight, but they constantly just say, oh, it's fine, it's Friday, Fat Fridays, cheat meal, have it, I'll buy it, my treat, and then they buy extra. And then they feed them more. That's a bad trait. That's a disgusting trait. Or perhaps a bad trait is a grandparent or an elderly member of the family giving a child, like, who's 2 years old, fizzy drinks on the down low. Giving them milkshake, giving them sweets, you know, on the down low. And the parents are wondering, why is my child so hyperactive? Or why is my child's teeth rotting before they've even properly grown? And asking the family, and everyone's saying, no, I don't know anything about it. That could be a bad trait. Moving across now to ugly traits. Ugly traits could be, and I shouldn't laugh at this, but the character that just came to mind was Rick from Rick and Morty, excuse me. So the character that just came to my mind was Rick from Rick and Morty. Now, I am absolutely a massive Rick and Morty fan. But one thing that really irritates me is the drool on Rick's mouth. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. And to me, that is just like, it's a bad trait. I wouldn't say it's an ugly trait, but it's a bad trait. It's so, it's gross. But an ugly trait, sorry, I digress. An ugly trait could be someone who pretends to be, a character who pretends to be someone's friend, and really they're not their friend at all. Really, they have a very dark and deep grudge that they hold against this person, and they would do anything in their power to be around in that person's life until they get their revenge that they seek. For example, one character in I watch Emmerdale. I'm a massive soap fan, and there's a character called Nate who found out about his dad, who happened to be Kane Dingle, and his dad was married to Moira, and they lived on the farm. And Nate came into the show as what's called a character that's called with the job title farmhand, I believe. Nate seduced Moira, and then when it was time, or when Nate felt it was time, I can't remember how it came out, but I believe it was revealed to Cain that, this is Nate, this is your son. Oh, and by the way, he's sleeping with your wife. And Nate took absolute pride in, breaking his biological dad's heart. And that's an ugly trait. That was sinister, it was well thought out, it was planned, it was executed. Finally, points to consider. When creating characters and using what I've now dubbed the onion effect, or think onion, think layers, think peeling back. Just think onion and peeling and exploring and peeling and exploring. When using this method, don't put too much pressure on yourself to absolutely delineate every single aspect of this character. I simply have, I've said this in a previous episode, a page with a stick person on there, and I draw out arrows and just list random things they have blue eyes, they have red lipstick, they have ginger hair, they have they're 5'3", they are from Jamaica. I just list things on there and then work with that, and then I start adding the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. But I do want you all to consider appearance, accommodation, nutrition, good traits, bad traits, ugly traits, because all these things may seem very, unnecessary, but they actually make the difference between a good piece of fiction and a great and exceptional piece of work. Authors who do this ridiculously well, and I'm a massive fan of her, J.K. Rowling, and her Harry Potter collection. The level of detail in these stories is just phenomenal and out of this world, even to the point where she's created and published the collection of short stories based on what the wizards and witches get when they're younger children. I think it has a story in there called The Hopping Pot, and so forth. And actually just looking at the detail and holding that collection of short stories in my hand as a fan of Harry Potter, I cannot be thankful enough to exist in a world where there's so many amazing writers that have come and gone before me, and I'm just in awe of the level of writing that they are at. They're inspirational. I love reading work. I love Bret Easton Ellis, American Psycho, that's one of my favourite books. Gillian Flynn, she wrote Gone Girl, again, another favourite. And I constantly think about the level of detail they touch on. Appearance, massively. Accommodation, immensely. Nutrition is sprinkled out these creative pieces. Good traits, bad traits, ugly traits are shown more prominently, especially when it comes to trying to convey the type of character, which is understandable because that's what we need as readers. But some of these things are just done so beautifully when I just sit back and read and I immerse myself into these worlds. I can close my eyes and I can vividly see what Patrick Bateman's bedroom looks like, what his bathroom looks like, what his entire apartment looks like. This was even before I knew a film existed of American Psycho and before I watched it. I can see every area of this character's accommodation. I understand this character's appearance. I understand this character's nutrition. So take those as points of consideration and don't feel afraid to just run with it. Even if it sounds weird, I'm weird and I'm a proud weirdo. Even if it sounds weird and strange, just do it. Write about it. And remember along the way, editing. You can always edit. Let's say your character had black hair, you can edit, you can give your character black hair with a white streak going through. You can change your character's eye color from grey to brown. There's nothing stopping you. You are the author, you are the writer, you are the creator of these characters and these worlds. You have planted all these onions and you're peeling back the layers. You're exploring the depth of a character. And depending on how long your piece of fiction is, you can go really into depth of it, or you can just touch lightly on it and give the readers a bit of, food for thought. They can wonder, I wonder if that character got over their disdain for rock music or something like that. I know it sounds a bit pedantic, but it is a point of consideration. Don't be afraid to create characters that you feel may not be received well by the public. Just write about them and see where it takes you. You can start off with there's the character in her yoga attire, going to the gym. She looks happy. Or perhaps she's crying. Perhaps inside her gym bag there's like a few bars of chocolate. Who knows? Who really knows? The author does. You do as a creative writer. I just want to say thank you for all of you that follow and listen to this amazing podcast. I do sometimes struggle with just turning on the mic and recording because for some reason I get a bit, I don't like using the word, but sometimes I feel a bit shy and I'm like, I can't do this. And then I record and I speak and I'm happy. And I want to get to a stage, or I will get to a stage where I'm delivering content that is so rich in its worth. And I just hope that if I, like Tupac Shakur, inspire or spark just one mind, then my goal here has been achieved successfully. I want the world of writers to write and write from their heart. Be true to your voice. Believe in yourself, believe in your word, believe in the worlds that you create as a writer. Thank you for remaining inside the mind of Dame Unique.